time is a finite resource. We only get this one life.
How do you know as a founder when to quit?
I never want to be so poor that all I have is money. All that you ever live is right now in the present. Think about the future and make sure you're doing the right things, but live in the present and enjoy it.
My guest today is Andrew McConnell. He's a multi-time founder, best-selling author, Team USA Bronze Award medal winner, and frankly, just a super philosophical individual. If there's one takeaway from this combo, it is that success is all about you. Don't let anyone else live rent-free in your head. Be curious, avoid sunk cost fallacy, and define success for yourself. And you cannot fail. I'm Adam Spector, four-time founder, investor in 200 plus startups, and CEO of Chore. We help founders outsource admin so they have more time, which is frankly the only finite resource in the universe. Let's dive in. Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is with great pleasure I have Andrew McConnell with me here today. Fascinating me about your background and all the things you've accomplished. You also have sort of this gold-plated background where it's like Harvard, Cambridge, Harvard, McKinsey, and yet you took the harder path in some ways, right? You became an entrepreneur and did the harder stuff, right? You could have stayed on that easy path probably your whole life. It went somewhere different. So Andrew, it is with great pleasure to have you here. I'm excited to learn from you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Our prep call for this, I think we connected really, really nicely and enjoyed the conversation. So I'm very much looking forward to today as well.
Yeah. So maybe just to do the usual startup that I do, and then I want to talk a little bit, obviously, a lot more about you. I'd just like to ask, how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? You mentored a lot of entrepreneurs. You've been an entrepreneur yourself. You are an entrepreneur yourself. What does it mean to be an excellent entrepreneur?
I think maybe it gets more down to values and traits for me than anything. And so there's one on curiosity and conviction where they're balanced out. So you have convictions, you have these strong beliefs, but you have this curiosity not to try to prove yourself right, but to try to learn what the truth is. And so constantly iterating. I mean, you hear all the different stories of how many winding roads entrepreneurs have to follow. I think as Sean Henry had stored that when I first met him, young guy and a deal fellow, and was building kind of a Airbnb for storage in people's houses and everything, and stored. That's what it was. But he listened to the market, pivoted, and now he's vertical B2B SaaS for D2C companies. And he just raised $200 million at a $1.2 billion valuation, right? So it wasn't, he's brilliant. He works very hard and he had an idea, but he was curious about what the right answer was to solve a problem in the market. You hear the same with Stuart Butterfield with Slack, that initially was a video game company and that didn't really work, but they built this internal tool and they said, hey, maybe this would be interesting to other people. And sure enough, Salesforce buys it for a ton of money. So I think they're both of those things. You have to work super hard. You have to be smart. You have to be passionate, but it's really balancing that curiosity with your conviction. You need to be convicted enough to really drive for it, and then curious enough to recognize when the signals are telling you to go elsewhere.
What are there certain metrics or signals that you think folks should look at strongly? So in other words, it is a really fine balance between saying, hey, I have strong conviction. The world might be telling me, there might be all these signals. The world says I'm wrong. I mean, in some ways, the best entrepreneurs are ones who ignore some of the world advice where it says, you can't do this, right? So Elon Musk, his rocket ship recently blew up. He, of course, did all these things with rocket ships and landed them that no one ever thought was even possible. And how is some random tech, finance tech bro able to go into this whole new space? Everyone told him he was crazy, right? None of the major government, Russia and the United States, were never able to build it. And yet he just kept pushing straight through and ignored the signals. Or maybe not, or maybe you'd say he didn't. He had enough signals internally that he was right.
I think that's the thing, right? He knew what his signals were. He looked at what are the components that need to go into these rockets? What are those prices and how do they change over time? And so he found an entirely different way to do it. So yes, he was hearing, hey, under the current structure of how things are done and built, you can't do this. But he just went to the commodities market and looked at, here's everything that's going on. Here's the price of batteries over time. He did his own analysis and said, this is wrong. And I imagine on each of those things, he was able at each point to say, hey, was my conviction correct? I thought the price of nickel would be at this. I thought this would look like this. Is it? Or was I totally wrong? Because there are a lot of times you can be an entrepreneur, you can be brilliant, have a great idea, but your timing's wrong. So you were, quote, right, just not at the right time. And I think that's where having those metrics, it's not a generic thing. It's knowing, hey, here are the things that I believe to be true. And here's how I'm going to hold myself to account to see if they truly are reality versus just something I hope would be true.
So I'm saying, like, does it take a certain kind of entrepreneur to really, really understand those signals? And I know I'm pushing this a little bit, but I think a lot of people might think, well, I'm hearing these signals or I'm seeing certain things that say it's really good or really bad. I mean, like, even myself as an entrepreneur, I'm overly optimistic, right? You almost have to be, because you have to believe this crazy idea can become a reality. So every like positive signal, like, yeah, we're doing great. Of course, at the same time, doubting myself. How do you really balance the two to become that Stuart Butterfield that says, hey, like, this is what's really taking off and I should just follow this signal, even if it's not what I'm most, like, Stuart Butterfield wanted to build a game. He wasn't passionate about some random communication new medium that obviously became Slack.
I think you need to be clear on what the metrics and the timing are. So this is where you can fool yourself for a long time. So again, there's not a single objective metric, but if you're saying, here is my belief of where this market's going, why this is important, et cetera. And if I don't get paying customers by this date or some other specific signal, then that is telling me maybe I'm right, but at the wrong time, or there's something else that I was missing. But I think to the point on conviction, entrepreneurs can be very pie in the sky, dreaming and all the possibilities. And that's where you do need to balance it with true metrics to hold yourself to account. Because I think it was Jason Fried, the 47 Signals Basecamp guy, he was saying the failure isn't switching or quitting. It's staying with something too long that you shouldn't have stayed with, because the opportunity costs are tremendous. And if it was so clear, we would never have failed startups, right? Like, you would never have somebody that ran all the way to the end of their burn rate, et cetera. Like, I don't think it is a pure science there, but I think you can take that art and make it more scientific by putting clarity around the assumptions that you have that would make what you're believing true, and checking, hey, was I right about this? I mean, this is even when you have conflict within a company, you say, hey, I think this is the right answer. I think that's the wrong answer. Okay, but why do you each believe that? Well, because I believe the market is growing in this way, or I believe the market is growing in this way. Okay, now we at least know where we differ on why we got to the answer. How would we track if one thing is true or not? And what is the timeline? Do we check every 3 months if these kinds of sales are being made versus these are not? And the more you can say, dig in, the Japanese 5 whys, whatever it is, like, why do I believe this, to get down to something that's measurable, the more you can take what is subjective and artistic and make it more objective and scientific. Not fully, but you can put more into it.
How often do you find yourself or the founders you work with being really good at asking sort of those 5 whys? Like, so once again, I sort of imagine Elon Musk, from what I read, I don't know him, but like asking publicly, like going really deep and asking those 5 whys and not accepting answers otherwise. I feel like a lot of other founders I know, though, aren't great at that. Like, it's probably a rare skill to be really good at asking.
It's incredibly rare. It's rare for any human, right? We seek confirmation bias. We want to feel smart. We want to feel right. And so that's part of what I'm saying, is doing it on the front end. Because if you go and start creating the targets once you've started, you create the targets around what you start. Oh, well, see, we're getting interest in this kind of group or these kinds of categories, or here's what interest counts as follows on our page versus dollars into our bank account, right? You can change the metrics. Whereas if you do it on the front end, it's more like Odysseus tying himself to the mast of saying, hey, no, I'm sailing through this. I'm going to be clear-eyed through it, as opposed to just constantly looking for, how can I justify what I already believe? And look, I do that all the time, right? I always am looking for, oh, wait, no, see, now I'm getting this signal. This is why this is so good, because I really believe in something. And so I'll try to find the pieces that fit it. That's why I need something more objective. Say, no, like, what is the core that tells you on the front end, if you had to design it from the beginning, would make this a success or not?
Does it help? How do you get help making sure you're looking at the right metrics? Like, do you have outside advisors that help you? Do you create your own? Like, how do you like try to do that the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I've always brought in advisors, right? I've liked to have early kind of co-founders in the company and people that I partner with, and given equity advisors from every company I've ever built at any point, because as I've always said, anything I'm trying to do, no one's smart enough to do on their own. Like, there's no one. You can't be smart enough. You can't work hard enough to do anything that's truly meaningful as an individual. You need more people. And whether they're younger, like Sean Henry, again, way younger than me, but man, what an advisor and mentor. Like, the things he's seen, the way he thinks about stuff. I remember going to a Greylock event back when I was starting my first company. And the eBay CEO, who, was in his late 50s or 60s, was talking about how Brian Chesky was his mentor and all these things he was learning about product and product design from him. And so it really was this both ways. It's not about age. It's not about particular experience. It's that these people can bring different perspectives that are valuable that may be blind spots to you.
How do you go about finding good advisors? Like, this is actually a personal pet peeve of mine. Like, I have a pretty big network and lots of people I can call on, but I've never been good at finding people who I want to get involved on a regular enough basis. Like, I've had good co-founders in the past, but not ones where I'm like, want them to be a partner or advisor, because it almost ends up feeling like work. And maybe that's me not asking enough questions, but it feels like, oh, I need to like go ask my advisors. They don't have a lot of context for all these questions. Now, I do that with my team all the time, but I think you might say, on the other hand, like, my team is, because they work for me, and it's a little bit of a different relationship than an advisor, they can't give me the objective thinking. Or can you do it with your own team? Like, just have a strong executive team?
You can do it at some level with your own team because they're going to be seeing things different than you. But at the same time, they're also, like you, a frog in the pond versus a bird flying over the pond. So yes, the advisor that's popping in and out is not going to have the same full context, but they're going to look at it at a totally different view than you or anyone in your team that are doing it day to day can. So that I think both are helpful and required. And when I go get an advisor, it's not generic. It's saying, whoa, here's this need, here's this problem, here's this challenge that I see us facing over the next 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. Who do I know that could be super helpful in this? Where if I don't know somebody, I go to the advisor I have and say, hey, I need somebody that helps me on this kind of thing. Do you have any recommendations that I can meet with? It can be time bound and discrete to specific areas.
And do you give your advisors like equity based on achieving a certain metric? Like, hey, I want you to help with this specific thing over this period of time, this many hours. And if you don't, sort of like, I'm not going to get you, you're not going to get your full vest, or.
Yeah. So there's I assume it came out of YC, but there's these FAST agreements that are standard template advisor agreements. And so it's just a matrix of stage of the company, A, B, or C, and level of involvement in terms of monthly, hourly commitment, and the responsibilities, A, B, or C. You just check in, and that's what the equity is, and fest each month. And if you're not doing it, then it's over. Or if you are doing it, then for this 6 months or 12 months or 24-month period, this is what the partnership looks like.
Speaking briefly about like the time value or kind of cost of time, how do you know as a founder when to quit? So I'll give you an example of this that I was thinking about today. One of the my portfolio companies, I invested in them probably like almost like 8 or 9, 10 years ago. And they've done well, but like they're growing through like 10% month or year over year, like not great growth, right? Yeah. And they're sort of, so they're growing, it's happening. When does that founder sort of say, you know what, I've done this a long enough time and it's time to move on? Like, either shut the company down or try to sell it. Like, it's a real business, it's profitable at this point, but it's probably not going to be venture scale. Yeah, because there probably aren't going to be big exits for the founder or for investors. And yet,
very few companies are venture scale. Right? You can go build a very good business that's just not venture scale. There are plenty of great business out there. They're just not all going to be Uber or Airbnb. Right? That's why Uber and Airbnb are household names, because they're far and few between.
Yep. So do you think he should get out? Would that be advice like, hey, you've been doing this long enough? Like, is there a point, at least for venture scale companies, and then maybe there's a difference between sort of the non-VC backed companies? It's like, hey, you can build a great business and not worry about it.
It depends on the objective, right? So if he's taken VC money and everybody's already written it off anyway, and he wants to keep running it, he enjoys it, he believes in what he's doing each day, and he likes the business, and it's not, hey, I have this other idea I'm super passionate about, but I feel wedded to this. I think that's a personal question, and it needs to be with the founder. I think so many times the assumption from an investor, from anybody on the outside, is like, hey, this person has to stay with the company. Like, they are with it till death do they part. And the founder needs to realize what sunk costs are. Yeah, I've poured 7 years of my life into this, but the loss isn't those 7 years. It's the next 7 if this isn't what I should be doing. And so that should be a question at any point, whether it's sale or whatever. Should this continue to run? And am I the right person to do it? Because there are plenty that the business does make sense to run. Somebody wants to take it over. Somebody could do seller finance and say, hey, look, I'll do a rev share on the back end. I'm just not the right person to do this anymore. There are lots of options to figure that out if the business should continue. It doesn't always have to shut down if it's a real business.
Yep. No, I agree. It's actually, that's a great segue into some of your life story. I mean, if from our previous conversation, you kind of mentioned how like you did all these things in life. You didn't feel this sort of sunk costs fallacy, and you were willing to move on. So dive into this, dive into your background. Like, why were you, I have young kids, and I sort of imagine like if I were to say something, I'd be like, hey, be like Andrew, right? Go to all the good schools, go to Harvard, go do all these things, check. Every parent would probably want you. I'm sure your parents are super, and we're super proud of you throughout life. But yet you got off that train of sort of the easy, not easy path, but like kind of the easy, obvious path, going from all the good schools to the right sort of consulting company, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Walk us through that sort of personal history, why you went the path and how you were able to step out of it, or why you decided to step out of it.
Yeah. This is going to be a long answer because there's a lot to unpack in all of this. But at one level, I wouldn't say my parents ever encouraged me or forced me or seemed to care if I was on that path or stayed on that path. Right? Like they
were your parents, like, are they doctors, lawyers?
Yeah, they're both physicians. I was born when they were in med school. They were very young. Always had this. My dad told me all the time. I literally maybe 2 weeks ago published a blog post on this of like the inheritance I got from my parents, which was not money. It was not a business, but it was my father telling me all the time, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. He said, I absolutely love going to work each day. He had no doctors in his family, but he loved what he did. My mom, the same. Hey, there's no dress rehearsal. This is our one shot. You have to make the most of this life. Mm-hmm. And I still have, she was a pediatrician, adult patients of hers come say, not many people say they love their doctor. I love your mother. Like what she did in my life. They just loved what they did. And that is the inheritance in the model I had of you are allowed to pursue happiness in this life. That is allowed. You don't have to be committed to these other things. Suffering is some kind of badge of honor. Like you can be happy. That is an okay thing to do and probably what you should do. Now there also would be parents, right? Like when I got into Harvard, I deferred. I was like, I'm not going to go to Harvard. I'm going to go, I want to go to USC and train. I was a swimmer and I wanted to go to Southern Cal. And then when they were like, no, you really should go to Harvard. I was like, okay, but fine. I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to move out to Hawaii and train for the Olympics and this, that, and the other. And they were at Harvard like, no, he's not. He's going to Harvard. So, there were times that they helped me overcome teenage decisions. But in terms of, I went to law school. We didn't have any lawyers in the family. I really, really wanted to be a lawyer. I thought, and I went and got my dream job and hated the work. I loved the issues. I loved the problem solving, all that. But the day-to-day work of an attorney, I absolutely hated. And they never gave me any grief for, wait, why'd you go spend 3.5 years getting 2 law degrees in 2 different countries, doing the bar exam to go to consulting? And when I was going to consulting, I remember talking to consultants and they were like, look, you were a great lawyer. You would have a very easy known path there. You don't know any of the stuff from these people coming in from business school or way ahead of you. This is going to be really hard, right? You need to think, is this what you want to do? I guess back to suffering doesn't in a badge of honor. I wasn't doing it because it was hard, but something being hard and different never scared me away because it was what I was interested in. It was, again, following the curiosity. What am I curious about? What do I want to do? And I did that until it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I wrote books until it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I worked on a certain company until it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I think that's enabled me to be fully present and fully committed and fully in to every single thing I do, whether it's writing the book, whether it's building a company, whether it's working for someone else and building out a business line or serving a client. I know I'm there because I want to be there and they can know the same and that I'm giving it 100% my best in that.
I mean, that's a pretty cool skill set. I think a lot of people have trouble moving on from things. Why do you think psychologically you're able to sort of just cut ties and make, all right, like it's really hard, right? The sunk cost, like you put in all this time and effort and money into school and all these other things and startups, same thing, and say, okay, I'm done. And move on.
This might be cliche, but money is a limitless asset, right? Like there's not a cap. Elon Musk could go from 600 billion to 4 trillion, whatever. Like there's no limit on money. And so it can go up and down, whatever it is, money can come and go. But time is a finite resource. We only get this one life in this body. You only get this 1 year. I mean, I'm 43, about to turn 44 next week. Some people look back and I'm like, oh my God, so much of my life is gone, blah, blah. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I still get to do this all over again. I have this back half that I got to go. This is amazing. But it's still finite. So say I get the full 44 more years. That's still it. That's it. This is my last 44 years. So losing money in some kind of time horizon, short term or long term, versus losing time with my family, losing time with my loved ones, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, first of all, that made my heart grow so much in the sense that I totally agree. This is something I say to people all the time. Although it's amazing how many people don't understand it, right? I mean, what I say to folks is almost the same as you. It's essentially saying like, look, you can always make more money. There's always more money available. The question that you have, at least like as a founder even, right, is how fast you can move, where you spend your time achieving whatever your next milestone is. Like how you spend that time is the biggest decision you make. It's not being cheap and like, I'm going to just be super frugal. Like go spend money and make an investment that will lead to the next big milestone for you or the next big learning so you can make a smart decision. You got to move out of it. Like, it's actually very hard, I think, for founders to move from the sort of mindset of I'm being really super cheap and frugal, like a ramen noodle founder, into I'm a fast growing founder and money is infinite. Like to your point, money is infinite and it's a really hard mindset to switch into. How did you make that switch? Or was it just always the way you were?
No, I want to be clear on money. I tend to be more frugal as a business owner, right? Like even when we were VC backed, my board members they loved it because like I wouldn't cater board meetings or anything. I was like, no, like the money is going to the business. We're investing this in the business. I don't need the frills and the fancy stuff. So I don't know if it's made me super loose with money, but I think there's a difference in a deficit mindset or scarcity mindset and one of abundance, right? And so if you look at, oh, here's all I have left. Like, here's all I have left these years versus, oh my God, I have all these years left. Or here's all the money in the bank. Or, wow, I could go do all these things with this money in the bank. It's the same objective truth, but the story you tell about it is different. And I don't think it came to me naturally. And I don't think I always had it, right? Like, I think there's a big period of my life I was much more cynical and everything. And I just didn't find that to be that enjoyable. Like, well, that's not how I want to live day to day. Let me go to this abundance, happy, optimistic view of what can be done, what can be created, what is out there versus what's missing right now.
So you make that sound easy. How do people actually get that mindset? Like, how do you actually move yourself into this sort of abundance versus scarcity mindset and saying the same thing? You're like there's so many opportunities for you. What an exciting time to be alive. Not that you're on the back half of your life. It's almost the beginning. I mean, you and I are close to the same age, and I feel very much the same way too. I'm like, my world is filled with possibilities and options. I'm so excited for the next, 40, 50, 60 years, because arguably, like, I have more freedom than I've ever had in my life. Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing thing to be in that place. I mean, certainly less I had young kids too, but like it's trade-offs. But high level, like I totally agree with you. But how did you get to that mindset? Like, was it because you wrote your book, a lot of reading, a lot of journaling?
So journaling. So the funny thing that I spent the past week to going through almost a decade worth of my journals.
Wow.
And reading the kind of stuff that I did. So, hey, I want to be the kind of person that enters a day grateful. Just, I want to have gratitude. So I'm going through these journals and first three things, I'm grateful for this, this, and this. And then there's journaling, but it starts with that. Then there were some affirmations. Hey, here's something I'm going to do. And I'm writing it 10 times every single day. And so this is how and why I did the book that I did with worksheets and tools. It's not enough to know or have your aha moment. You have to do work with it, right? Like if we want to get better at running or swimming or jumping, we go put in work to run or jump or swim or get stronger. We lift weights. If we want to lose weight or put on muscle, we eat more protein or we cut out certain unhealthy foods from our diet. We put in the work day after day. And if you want to change your mindset, it's not enough to read a book and say, oh, I'm going to have this mindset, or listen to a podcast. I'm going to have this mindset. You say, okay, I need to go put in the work day after day after day. And seeing these journals, like, wow, yeah, for 10 years, I was putting in the work day after day. And so I don't know if it happened. It definitely did not happen overnight, but over series of days, months, years of repetition, I'm now a really optimistic guy. I now look for the good in things, right? Like my current gratitude practice is each morning having 5 things that I pause on for a minute each to be grateful for. And my rule is it can't have been something I've ever been grateful for before.
Wow. Wait, so every day is something different.
Something different. And so what that means in the end, right? At the beginning, you can do your family and your health and right. But then you run out of those. You use that for the rest of your life. And so then it gets to basically you have to just do stuff that happened for the first time the day before. And so what it does is
like I'm grateful that I get to be on this podcast with Adam, hopefully.
Yeah. Like had an amazing conversation with Adam. I'm grateful, man, that this lunch I got to try this new thing that I never tried. Like whatever the 5 are. And what it does is as I'm thinking through those 5, it rewrites my memory of that day, of this amazing day. My day now was this incredible day because I've just thought through these 5 things. As I go through my day, because I know my homework the next day is going to be to think through 5 positive things, I'm just on the lookout for what are things to be grateful for as opposed to, oh, this line was too long or, oh, the traffic was bad. I was like, oh my God, the traffic could have been this, but it was only this. That's so exciting, right? So it trains me to look for the positive story in everything. And so short answer at the end of my very long answer on how to do it was gratitude practice for me consistently day after day for years on it. So I don't know if that's an easy answer for people, but I can say it's made a dramatically positive impact on my life.
I mean, there are no easy answers. If you want to be an entrepreneur of any type, there are no easy answers. You're taking a hard path, but you're also giving yourself the freedom to make all these life choices that you don't have if you just work in a company for someone else. So there are trade-offs there. So using the point of the gratitude practice and being optimistic, we pre-call her to kick this off. We're like, oh man, it's been a tough week. Why has it been a tough week? And how do you square that with the gratitude practice and optimism?
Yeah. So, I mean, for one, last year I had 2 very aggressive malignant melanoma. And so now I have to go every 3 months. A month ago, they found some more. So this week I was in for an operation, had to get that out. So I'm not able to work out. Last year, I was able to kind of work around it and cycle and do stuff. But this time they're like, no, really don't. Like there's stitches inside the muscle. Like you have multiple layers, just like you need to take it easy. So that's rough for me. Like I'm a guy that the first 9 years of my daughter's life, I didn't miss a day of exercise. I exercise every single day. So the idea of going 2 weeks is tough. We weren't sure if we'd get into it. You know, I'm currently in litigation with my ex-wife around some issues with my daughter and where she's going to live. And so that's really hard, right? Like just someone that you were with for 19 years and had this relationship with now in this environment and the toll it takes on our daughter.
Yeah, now you're in a litigious, that's hard. Litigation is hard no matter what it's with, but even more and it's always emotional, I find, in litigation, but even more so, of course, for someone who you were very close with and trust with, and I'm sure shared many wonderful moments with.
Well, that's the other thing, going through these journals, like so many wonderful moments, so much appreciated, and like crazy to go back how recently all of that was indeed true. That's also difficult. So, you know, there are a couple things that not a normal week in that respect. Like business side, things are great. Lots of exciting things. Love doing this podcast. Have wonderful friends and loved ones in my life. Like there are a lot of good things, but those are 2 pretty exceptional things that I don't get every week that hit me harder than most things would.
How do you think, just to help you think through that maybe a little bit, but also it might be interesting for everyone. How do you reframe some of those, or how do you get through those as an individual, right? That's very tough. No matter what, like that stuff hits, it's tough. But how do you think you will process it and turn it into something that can make you stronger?
Yeah, this may get way too philosophical and metaphysical.
I mean, you wrote a book about Stoic wisdom, so go for it.
Like there's the Stoic side of it, which is my typical approach anyway. Like there are things we control and things we can't, and the only thing we control is our mindset. So don't get caught up on all these things. So, right, like what can I do about skin cancer now? I keep my body covered and I take certain supplements, or I put lemon zest on top of my salad and try to be try to do the things that are in my control, and I can influence certain things, but I can't control. So I won't get caught up in the outcome. There are other pieces to it though, that this may be too woo-woo for people. I'm a big believer in the eternal flow of energy, in that every particle in the known universe existed from the moment of creation of the universe, and it will through the end of the universe. And as we sit here talking, we're breathing in particles that were once a part of Napoleon and Genghis Khan and Jesus Christ, and not just humans, but all the way back, Stardust, right? We're literally made of Stardust. We're going to return to Stardust. And so this current form is a point in time manifestation of that eternal energetic force that we all share and are all a part of. And this form, I believe, is served up the things it needs for this form. So whatever you're going through at the time, and this is in the book too, that no matter what someone goes through, how horrible it is, you ask them afterwards. You say, would you ever wish that on somebody? Say, absolutely not. I would never want that to happen to anyone else. Okay, would you wish that wouldn't happen? Absolutely not. That made me who I am, and I love where I am, so I would not change that. And so, yeah, it's tough in the moment, but by definition, we can survive it because we have survived it. We're here. And there's going to be another side to it one way or the other. Like we're all getting to the same destination in the end. And so there's only so much stress you can carry with you at it. Now, that being said, like my Whoop stress score, when I'm in court and hearing, like it's off the charts. So I can objectively know something is objectively feel something different.
That's a great mindset to have. How do you think founders should look at that? Like using that same mindset, if you're thinking through your business, things are tough, not going well, you're not getting the customers you expect, growth isn't what you want it to be, things are slower than you want, team is unhappy, there's a million reasons why startup and founders are frustrated. How do you use that same mindset to get past the million challenges that founders face?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, and this is why I wrote, the initial book I wrote was actually the Startup Stoic. So it was applying Stoic principles to building a company. That never published. We ended up doing a different one. But the idea on really going back to what are the things you can control and influence versus not. And so, hey, I can't control if this customer signs this contract or not, but I can influence it by researching them better, understanding what their needs are, updating the deck, doing like making the product better in these ways. What are the things that I can do and either control or influence? I can control my mindset and I can influence all these other things by the actions I take. And really, every time you're stressing about something, oh, the team's super frustrated, this team's unhappy about, okay, I can't change their happiness levels, but I can influence it. Let me understand what is making them unhappy. Is it the volume of work? Is it the volume of work, but not on the things that they think actually are going to move the business forward? Like we're doing a bunch of things that take up a bunch of time and effort, but it's not moving the needle on the things that we say we care about. Okay, great. Like, let's go reassess what is going to move the needle. Let's redo what the work we are doing is. And so I think going through that exercise of being very, very clear, what is difficult, what is frustrating, what is hard right now, and then what can I not influence in that or control, and what can I, and then just be laser focused on doing those things that you actually have under your control. One of my favorite real life examples of this was, maybe it was 3 years ago at Wimbledon. Djokovic lost to Alcaraz in the final. And it was the most gracious speech at the end where he's like, look, were there a number of years that it really could have gone Roger's way or Rafael's way, but it went mine? Yeah, just like today, like it could have gone my way, but it went Carlos's. Like that happens. But it's not about the result. It's about the process that I put in. What I can control isn't the ultimate result. It's the work that I put in day to day to be ready to compete for that result. And I was, wow. And then he came right back and won the US Open and set the record for the most Grand Slams ever. And I don't think it's an accident because he wasn't always caught up on the outcome. He was, hey, I have good process. Let me focus on the process. That is what I can control.
Yeah. And essentially then it's also saying like, I can control the process. Presumably he's also learning from it, right? So when he lost, he's like, what could I have done better, right? I'm sure there are things, even at someone at that level who's saying, I could have done this better. I could have worked harder. I could have improved this.
He would do the same if he won, right? That's the same. Tiger won, he had the most successful year of any golfer and then went back and redid his entire swing because he didn't say, hey, the results say that I did everything right. He was saying, hey, what can I learn? What is a better process? The best in the world are always looking at the process.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing with my own company where we're always rethinking, can this process improve? What needs to be changed? What's the data show? So, I never feel like we're never satisfied in that point.
Right.
So speaking of the book briefly, right? So it's titles: Get Out of My Head, Creating Modern Clarity with Stoic Wisdom. what are kind of the three big takeaways, especially for entrepreneurs, since that's the focus of this podcast, but what are the three biggest takeaways that you think are most relevant? Stoic wisdom versus the million other philosophical wisdoms. Like stoic wisdom is a little bit sexy, I think, for founders, but still, like, why that?
Yeah, so I'll start there. That there was a debate with the publisher. I wanted to put ancient wisdom, and the publisher said, "Do you see how many books Ryan Holiday sells? We're going with Stoic, right?" And so, because in the book you have the Tao Te Ching, you have Buddhism, you have so there's a lot of philosophies and ancient thought systems in there, but the launching point for each chapter is a Stoic quote, and so we went with Stoic, and it is the predominant philosophy in there. The big takeaways, so it's this concept of mind ownership versus mind rentership tendency. So back to there's only one thing in our life we ever own, and it's our mindset, right? The body, a virus can get in, take us over, bacteria, all that. Like, body don't fully, any physical item or good, government can confiscate it, could be broken, anything. The only thing we control is our mindset, and we have it from birth. It is what we have from the time we're born.
You say what we have is our mindset from birth, but I assume it's changeable. Right? We have control over our mindset. It's not that our mindset set at birth. Although everyone has a personality, right? You have a child, like everyone has a mindset at birth to some extent, but you can impact that, and you can choose to impact
only
it
because it's all inside, right? Like, so it's only us, and yet we almost everybody spends most of their life renting pieces back. They've given it because they've given their mind to their employer during the 8 hours they're there. They've given their mind to Mark Zuckerberg and Instagram or Facebook. They've given their mind to Reed Hastings and Netflix. Whatever it is, you've given your mind to the jerk that cut you off in traffic and put you in a bad mood for 2 hours. That guy doesn't know you exist. He cut you off because he didn't see you, but he's in your head giving you a bad mood for 2 hours after this thing happened. You gave that to him, and you're renting back your mood from him on the back end. All the time, we're renting pieces back. And so it's saying, why do we do that? Why do we rent to other people? Why do we rent to events and circumstances outside our control? Oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? What all these catastrophizing? And then why do we rent to different or imagined versions of ourselves? I really should be doing this. Oh, my parents would really prefer I did this. Oh, the friends from high school would think it'd be really cool if I had done this thing versus what do I actually want? And so for each of those, it gets into the mechanics of why we fall into that trap in the first place. And then a tool, exercise, or behavior kind of practice that you can put into place when you're noticing that to overcome it and override it. And so there are worksheets there. And honestly, on my website, andrewmcconnell.com, there's a free workbook. So you can get all the tools for free from just a download PDF if anybody wants that.
Yeah. Is there a simple reason for why we end up renting that? Is it something as simple as like, we don't want to deal with the hard things, so we essentially distract ourselves with everything else?
I think it actually comes down more to evolutionary biology. So if you think about we're out in the savannah, we're like walking, and we come to the watering hole, and we hear some rustling over to the side, and then we're an optimist. We're like, look, 99 times out of 100, it's a meerkat. It's not going to be a lion. Like, I don't need to worry about it. And I'm an optimist. It's not a big deal. Well, that one time in 100, you got eaten and your genes didn't get passed on. So the paranoid people, the people that thought, hey, the worst thing that possibly could happen is what's there. Even though 99 times out of 100 they were wrong, they were the ones that survived the 100th to pass on their genes. So we got the paranoid. Same for the people that come down to the watering hole and stop and smell the roses, look at the beautiful scene, instead of constantly being vigilant and on alert for the risk coming. Those people that just were able to be at peace and zen and enjoy all that, they got killed. They got eaten. They did not survive to pass on their genes. So as humans, it's like Andy Grove said, the paranoid survive. It's true. And so we live in a world where our physical safety is not at risk in the same way, but we have that same constant vigilance. And so every facial expression or tone of voice, well, what does that mean? Am I at risk for this? And that is the default. And so it takes a lot of work to override that default and help teach ourselves, hey, I'm not at risk in that same way anymore. I can think about this differently.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of two personal stories that I have, where one was literally last night I was at a dinner and I was walking home, and two guys got in a fight on the street. And it was literally because, from what I could tell, there were two cars. The one guy in the car behind kind of parked his car and I guess touched or hit somehow the guy's car's in front. And they're out there, I got a fist fight, like literally in front of me. I was worried they were going to break out guns or something, right? Which is super scary. You're getting other people involved. And it sounds like it was just over that, like his car got tapped by the other car. The other car might not have even known there was anyone in it. It was trying to squeeze into a tight parking space and just flipping out. And scary for everybody who was on the street then. And that guy then just was super angry. He goes peeling off in his car, which could hit someone. Like all these things, mostly probably was just in his head. And that's sort of the negative side of it. And the positive side, on the other hand, I have some really good friends, and my wife and I used to joke a little bit that they would be incredibly positive. They were like, this is the best food we've ever had. This is the best day we've ever had. I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. It can't be the best day ever. And at the same time, as we've grown older, I've really come to appreciate their mindset a lot, where there's like, yeah, like they're just appreciating that moment. And this is wonderful in the moment. And they're right. Like, what a wonderful moment to be in. And in that very moment, it is the best. And it seems kind of crazy to like, this is just amazing. And like, yeah, like I should feel that way every day. And it just, those are two contrasting things that came to my mind when you were explaining that. Should the entrepreneur try? I mean, you want to be a little paranoid, right? Andy Grove, who wrote a book, everyone should read. Like, you need to be. I'm paranoid every day for my company that we're going to get eclipsed by all these other companies that we're not moving fast enough every single day. It scares me. I'm paranoid about that.
Yeah, this is where these are tools in a tool belt, not the single sledgehammer to use in every situation, right? To say, hey, what is a useful tool for this situation for me? Not, hey, no matter what. And like I've had lots of conversations on this. My eternal reframe the story and see the positive. It's a tool. It's a useful tool, but what does it do in terms of preventing me from fully feeling and digging into certain emotions at times in uncomfortable situations? And what is the cost that I have on that? So maybe there's another tool that I need to look at there of the pause, of sitting in uncomfortable emotions and all this. It's not saying, hey, this is the one right answer. It's saying, hey, here's a set of tools to do. And there are trade-offs. I remember doing an event for a company right with the book launch. And there was a salesperson talking about, well, you talk about running your mind and not constantly being on the computer or email or this, that, and the other. But my father was this incredibly successful salesperson, and he attributed it to always being on call. And anytime someone came, he was on. He was the first one to do it. And how could I do that if I'm saying, hey, no, I'm only checking email these 2 times a day, or whatever the process I put in place to try to not let people live rent free in my head? And my answer was, you need to decide what's more important to you, right? Is it more important to be a successful salesperson and do it that way? Or is your equanimity during the workday or whatever more important to you? You can't have everything. You have to pick what's more important. And I'm not telling you what's right for you. I'm just giving you tools. If you're saying, hey, this is what I value, I really don't like this, here's a tool to address that. But it is going to come at a cost to this other side. Most of these things are not cost free. They're going to be trade-offs, and you have to make the decision of, is that trade-off worth it for you?
If you think through the world's best entrepreneurs, however you want to define that, but there's a ton out there. You mentioned a few of them. Do they have a sort of mindset that you think they all share, like philosophically, or a philosophical way, or kind of a way of running or doing their business? Or, and I will add, by the way, like there's a lot that we can do publicly, but some of the public ones sometimes are the ones who are maybe not ones you want to emulate. Like, yes, they've been really successful, but they've also messed up a lot of things in their lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is back to the question. They're trade-offs. And so what is it that you value or not? If it's building the most innovative, biggest, best companies and everything, I mean, it's hard to look different than Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, right? And say, okay, then what are the trade-offs that they've had in their own lives, right? How many marriages or relationships or, whatever it is. And that still could be the total right answer for them. They built world-changing businesses that we all get a benefit from. I don't think it's that different. I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, but he's not a happy guy. There's no sitting back enjoying that he's Michael Jordan, that everybody in the world knows Michael Jordan. Like, he doesn't get to, we got to see beautiful basketball. We got to appreciate that on the outside, but it came at a real cost to his life. That was a trade-off. To have that level of competitiveness, everything else came at a cost for all these other things that you may say I value more. Now, I don't know if you can be Michael Jordan and this great family person and totally at peace. And like, there are trade-offs with it. And so when you say the most successful entrepreneurs, I think you need to figure out what success means to you. Is it the biggest company possible? Okay. Like, I think there are certain models for that and certain trade-offs you're going to have to make in terms of personal life and hours and everything else, and how cutthroat you're willing to be with competitors, the things on the line of legality you might be willing to do at times. Like, if those three, like, there's certain things that you look at and you're like, wow, I don't know if ethically I'd be comfortable with some of those things, but that's what they were willing to do. And they got to where they are. And I don't think it's an accident. There are others that say, wow, I never want to be so poor that all I have is money. And they look at their life of, hey, I built this great business. I was able to support my employees. My customers are super happy. I have this beautiful relationship. Like, I'm not Elon Musk on this. I'm not Michael Phelps on this. I'm not J.K. Rowling on this. Like, I'm not going to be the best at every single thing or any of the things. But in terms of my balanced portfolio life, it is what success I want to have. And that's the model I want to emulate. And so I don't want to come back and say, hey, here are the traits to be a successful entrepreneur, because I think you need to figure out what success you're seeking.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it is a critical question for everyone to ask themselves, like, what does success really mean to you, and what does that look like? And that can be hard. I think these I've seen over the course of my own life, and maybe yours as well. Maybe accepting, like, you might not want or you'd be able to build that massive quote unquote legacy where you're Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or something. But that's probably okay. Like, I actually feel bad for them. Like, they can't go anywhere publicly. Like, I can go to a restaurant and walk in the street and see people who almost, get in a fist fight. But that's also real life. Like, they had to be whisked away everywhere with security and guards. And, there's sure they can afford anything, but at what cost and what trade-off of that, in maybe being okay with that, while at the same time I personally still want to build a really big, successful company that can make a real impact on the community of customers that we have and in future ones that we'll have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard because you think about legacy and growth and where you want to be as a person and what does that mean and what sort of parent, father, spouse, et cetera, friend do you want to be too?
You don't want to just play small and your kids think, oh, okay, there's a cap on what my ambitions or aspirations can be either. I think it's just being clear on what the rated order of priorities are. Like, look, there's no cap. I'm not saying I don't want a big company. I'm saying I'm not going to do it at the cost of this other thing. And when it comes to that, I'm going to choose this over this at those times.
I mean, going back to your mom, I mean, she sounds like she was incredibly successful at her job when she was an entrepreneur, but her role and job that she chose, she was incredibly successful. And she presumably doesn't regret a day of her life that she did that.
Yeah, exactly. And she never in her life made six figures, right? Despite being pediatric hematologist, oncologist, working 80 hours a week, all that, right? And for her, it wasn't about the financial, like, sure, I'm sure she'd be happier if she had more money in the bank now, but would she have traded that to not get those experiences with all those children, all those patients over the years? There's not a chance.
Yeah, that's kind of what I assumed. So, I want to come back to your book at some point, but we'll get there. This is a decent way to kind of opportunity to move into you being an entrepreneur, right? It's kind of funny. We were like halfway through this discussion. We haven't really talked about you as an entrepreneur. Walk us through the companies you founded, what happened with them, and then how you've done this trade-off of kind of a philosophical approach to life in building startups.
Yeah. So the first one was, it was kind of funny. I was on vacation with my parents and over lunch talking to some of their family friends, and they mentioned this way of doing vacation rentals on VRBO. And I said, well, why don't people do it this totally different way where they sell all the weeks in big blocks to professional managers through auctions? So they do none of the work, they get a market clearing price and it's guaranteed. And I said, well, yeah, if somebody did that, everybody would do that. So I said, oh, well, everybody sounds like a big market. Is this a big market? And it was. So the first company was Vacation Futures. It was this kind of reverse marketplace for wholesale or bulk rentals for vacation homes.
It was the idea. Was this when Airbnb already existed, right?
Yeah, this is 2012. This was in 2012. So Airbnb was out there, VRBO was out there. There were a bunch of Wimdu, Nine Flats. There were a bunch of companies out there.
Your idea basically that like you guys could be like, not everyone's going to want to list or manage their property and have it on Airbnb. They just want to get rid of the whole hassle, like everything.
Yeah. And maybe they could make more money doing less work and have it guaranteed instead of fluctuating by letting a professional who's buying up a bunch of these contracts do it. And so that was the first company, kind of iterated, and then got to a point where we were doubling every month, 53% EBITDA, it was great, raised a bunch of venture, and then promptly plateaued and kind of hit the head against the wall for a while. Why do we plateau? And realize, the supply, owners wanting guaranteed money, none of the work, as high a possible price, is almost infinite. But the number of companies that have the financial means and diversification and ability to do that is not. So how do we solve that? And what we ended up doing was starting a separate special purpose vehicle and company called Rethink Capital LLC, where we created a fund where we would help finance managers to do it within the marketplace. And so
the challenge was, I guess, so just to reiterate the challenge, there's all this property out there that lots of people want to rent, but a number of people who are willing to actually pay upfront to essentially purchase these massive blocks of property time is very small because the financing essentially wasn't in place for some
correct. So we go create a company to do the financing, Rethink Capital. And again, it started off 72% IRR, 5-month payback. It was amazing. Economics were great. Then kind of people saw it. Sonder, Lyric, there were these others, Stay Alfred. They went and raised $250 million here, $800 million there. And it just flooded the market with money where the economics weren't good anymore.
You guys were the first.
Yeah, we were the first one doing, And we were trying to finance and work with them. And then they just ended up raising their own balance sheets to do a lot of this stuff. Yeah. So we were working with them early. So once we had a couple thousand properties, we said, look, these aren't good deals anymore. We're not going to go lease more properties. What we should do is try to make more from the properties we have. So we started doing more in-house revenue management and pricing. So similar to how airlines or hotels do. And we did it thinking we'd get 5 or 6% more revenue per property. And overnight it was 30 to 100%. So, whoa, this is a big, big difference when it's our money. This is really good. So we were doing that on that portfolio and making a lot more money. But then the managers we worked with had other properties that we weren't doing this for. And they said, can you do this for me? And I said, well, yeah, you're going to have to pay us to do it. And then as we started doing it for more, he said, well, we need to build software to do this. And then COVID hit. And so we convinced our board to let us go spin out a new company, raise a separate round to go build a software company, Rented, that became the kind of pricing software for enterprise vacation rental managers. And so through 2020, 21, 22, built that, sold it in 2022 to a private equity fund that was doing a vertical SaaS roll up. And so did that for 365 days. And on the 366th, my attorney said, hey, I'd like to incorporate a new business. And that is what is now Lively. And so my co-founder was Booking.com's first employee outside of North America, scaled it from $100 million startup to $170 billion public company now, ran their strategic partnerships, negotiated the biggest deals in the travel industry ever. And he's a competitive runner, like a 119 half mile guy in his mid 40s. I was a competitive swimmer, as we talked about. And health had always been this big passion of ours. And we get questions on what should you do? How should I do this? Is that, hey, could we go take what we know and help serve that to the benefit of others? And so started building a Lively. And the idea is we now have so much data, right? That more than 50% of people have some kind of wearable, a Whoop, a Aura, Apple Watch, whatever, throwing off tons of data, that instead of getting generic advice like exercise more, eat better, sleep better, we can get, hey, your issue isn't sleep. It's that you don't get enough deep sleep. And here's the number one thing that you can do to improve your deep sleep. And you're like, yeah, but I'm never going to do that. Okay, here's the number 2 thing. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Here's the number 3. Oh, I'd try that. Okay, cool. And then we support them in that habit change to implement that and then help them see the progress over time. So I say, hey, 2 months from now, deep sleep is no longer your biggest issue. Your biggest issue is the number of sleep disturbances. Let's figure out how we can address that and then supporting them in that. So it's a corporate wellness benefit. So we did it thinking it'd be B2C. Once we started doing it, companies and corporate benefits, people started reaching out and say, hey, could we offer it to our employees? Could we offer it to our clients? Said, oh, well, we both have B2B backgrounds. Let's go more B2B here.
Why did corporate benefit folks want it? Is it because there's upside if their employees are happier, making habit changes that leads to lower turnover or something?
Yeah. So the metrics that get tracked. So Harvard did a study that every dollar spent on wellness benefits returns 6 in terms of reduce absenteeism, increase productivity, reduce healthcare costs, all these different pieces you can do. And so I was talking to a CEO of a very large unicorn yesterday who talked about, to win in his space, he needs the best possible team. They have to have the best people possible. So the things he cares most about, this is before I even told him what I did. The things he cares most about are undesirable churn, so the people you didn't want to leave that left, and then the leading indicator being employee engagement. And so they keep a tight eye on that. And so they had invested in fertility benefits. They had invested in paternity leave, paid paternity leave. And so the idea of, hey, I want to invest in your health so that you feel better every single day. Or you're going to be a happier, healthier person that's more likely to stay at this company, that's more likely to put more in during the day, be more productive. You're not coming to work groggy and taking 2 hours to do what maybe well rested you could do in 45 minutes. And so that's the ROI they see.
So a little bit of a pet peeve, but also a question, which is, why aren't people just doing this themselves? So in other words, like, why do I need my company to go do this? Where everything you just described, I should be doing that myself. I think I am. Like, I try really hard my company is not giving me benefits to go do that. And I'm really focused on showing up really well every day for my team, my family, and friends. But a lot of people aren't. Like, why?
There are three big reasons there. So, I mean, one, companies' benefits that they invest in typically fall into two big buckets. So one is an everything store, which the problem for most people in wellness is overwhelm.
You mean like there's just a store of like, choose these 5 different things you can...
Not just 5, it's 80 different benefits. Like, oh, do I need Pilates classes or at-home bike, or is it a therapist, or is it this meditation app, or is it this nutrition coaching, right? Like, it's the entire universe of all possible solutions. And I think, as I hear it from most people in wellness, they go get this advice on all the things they need to do. And when it's greater than one thing, like, this is impossible. I'm just not going to do anything. Right? It's just too much. I'm not going to do anything. So that's one universe of that's a big problem. There's another world for corporate benefits of point solutions. So the step challenge. Hey, we're going to do the step challenge. How many people on the team can do 10,000 steps a day? Or, hey, we got everybody Headspace. Now, what that assumes is, out of fitness, nutrition, sleep and recovery, stress management, social connection, that everybody has the same problem. It's steps. It's not just, and it's not step. It's not just fitness, it's steps. That is the one thing that everybody needs, which may actually be true for 3% of your population, right? Like, It's gotten so specific, it's not relevant. And same with Headspace. Hey, the one issue is your mental health, and the best way to do it is not a therapist or this or breath exercise. It is this meditation app, right? Like this so point. And so either it's way too broad or way too specific and not personalized to the person. So that's why we come at it that way. Now, your second question on why is it the company, not the individual, doing this, is that in the Western world, we live in this weird situation that, yes, we get the benefit of our health, but who pays for the costs?
Mm-hmm.
The employer, insurance companies, and the government.
Yep.
So follow the dollars. That's who says, hey, we're going to go invest in this because we're the ones that make money or lose money when this isn't done well.
Essentially saying the individual has been trained not to not think that they are in charge of their own health and outcomes.
Not in charge, or we live in this strange situation where 89% of people say health is their top priority or a top priority. Where at the exact same time, 93% of Americans have a diagnosable metabolic dysfunction. So
it's crazy.
How are these things? And so it seems too overwhelming and hard, right? Like, I don't have time. Okay, how many hours were you on social media or watching Netflix yesterday? 2.5. Okay, so you didn't have time to do 10 minutes of vigorous movement in the entire day, but you did have 150 minutes to put sitting and scrolling, right? There's some disconnect between that. And I think part of it comes down to it's way too broad or it's way too specific. And so it's helping people find the thing that they can start. And once they build that progress and see the momentum that they're building, they're more likely to compound on it.
Yeah, no, look, I'm a huge believer in something like we get pretty much everyone on our team executive coaching for some of those same reasons.
Amazing.
Maybe there's other things we should do as well, it sounds like, but it makes a ton of sense. So, okay, so going back to sort of the short-term rental sort of space in those companies. So did all 3 of those companies sell to private equity, or did only like one of them sell? And then what happened to the others? And then where do you think you went, like, right or wrong, right? In other words, like, you're in the mix in 2012 with like all these top companies. Airbnb is worth how many billions of dollars today? Massively successful. So there's other names I've heard of. Zero offense, but like haven't heard of you guys.
No.
And but you were there. You were inventing some of these things that changed the industry.
Yeah. So with Vacation Futures, I think part of it was we found product market fit. We were just wrong about how big the market was, right? For the discrete market that we had PMF, and that's why it doubled every month and it had great margins, et cetera. Like that was a great business. But how we started a lot of this, it wasn't a venture scale business at the market size that it was. And so I think where we went wrong was we raised too much money too early. I think we could have run that money, that business very, very well and come to 2020, 2021. The funny thing was all the customers were like, man, you were just too early. That business would kill it today. I just didn't want to go build that business again. But everybody's like, man, we really need that business that you had back in 2012, 2013, 2014. We really need that today. I was right at the wrong time, it seemed. Once we had raised a VC money, it was, you needed to burn to either keep it taking off and get that, billion plus exit or burn it to the ground.
And you didn't want to go back in after, like, burn it to the ground. Great. Go start again. I have all this new learning. I get new VCs, be like, yep, we're going to back. Yeah. Go, Andrew, get it done.
I guess, that's the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay liquid. I could have been right, but it wasn't still clear when right would have worked, right? Like if you had Uber before a smartphone with GPS, it didn't matter. Like you couldn't act, you were right at the wrong time. You needed all these pieces. And so the timing was wrong, raised the money too early on it. Like if we just run it as the lifestyle business, it was throwing off lots of cash, et cetera. Yeah, that company could still be operating at the scale it was and had a few handful of employees and been fine. The fund margins get arbitraged away, right? Like once people saw the kind of money you're going, more money pours in and they trade until there's not money to be made. And so if anything, we got lucky that we transitioned. So that it was a partnership with a big family office. We just transitioned the fund to them with the properties and they got to, on the rev share, take the money out. And so that just kind of ran its course for the leases that we had on those properties. But it was great that we stopped when we did because the other companies that were competing with us that raised a lot of money, they all went bankrupt, right? Because COVID hit. We got out of it before COVID hit. And if they could have seen through, it could have been fine. But there was that 3, 4, 6 month period where you had financial commitments going out and nothing coming in and everybody went under.
And those are founders, and you're saying like some of them raised like $250 million or more.
800 million. One raised 800 something million. Yeah.
So what happened? I don't know if you know those competitors, you can speculate, but like, I feel like a lot of people get really deep in their startup becomes who they are in their identity, end up becoming, if you're someone who's raising 800 million, you're probably like, I am a really freaking good entrepreneur. Like I crushed it. My company's worth a few $1 billion. I've done all the right things. This is me. And then to have that go to zero.
Well, that one, to be fair, is at like 20. It went public in a SPAC, and even though it raised 800 something, it's trading at less than 20 million. Yeah, ready to go bankrupt any day, right? Like they still aren't a profitable company.
What does that do to your identity? Like, how have you been able to say, okay, like this was me at this point in time. This was me at this point in time. You throughout your whole life, arguably, you're someone who seems like this is who you are at this point in time. And you're willing to move on.
Yeah.
Whereas, how do you think these other founders, and maybe a lot of them, maybe you don't, how do they move on from that when you're this person who is, everyone knows who is this massively quote unquote successful entrepreneur with a company worth a few $1 billion and now it's about bankrupt, basically?
Yeah. I mean, in full transparency, one of those 3 that raised 9 figures and went bankrupt, I just invested in his most recent company. Like the guy I believe in and works hard, and like some things work out, some things don't, right? He had a company in between that and the one I just invested in. He had another company that raised a bunch of money and took off and then also didn't work, right? Like it's just, back to this identity, I actually think at least 2 of the 3, the third one I knew first, but I don't know as well, ironically, they didn't tie their whole identity, who they are, to that one thing. They care a lot about it. They work a ton at it. They believed in it, etc. But I had a whole blog post on like no more labels. There was a time that I was a swimmer. That was my full identity. And then I got injured. I'm like, what am I now? Like I was this national team athlete. Like what am I now? But I was in school, so I could be, I'm this great student. I'm going to be so good in school. And then I got out and was, I'm a McKinsey consultant. I'm going to be this McKinsey consultant guy. I wear the blue shirt, the dark slacks. And so it kept changing uniforms, clothes, whatever my identity was. And I don't think it was probably till I had a child. I'm like, wait, I don't have to be one thing. And going through the vagaries of entrepreneurship, I would journal a lot on what am I if I'm not a CEO? Like, could I be okay waking up tomorrow and not being a CEO? Like, how much of my identity has to be tied to that? And I sold a company. I worked for a year. Like, I wasn't. And like, okay, I'm fine with who I am. I can be a dad. I can be a friend. I can be an athlete. I can be an author. I do a bunch of things, but I'm not any of those things. I am just me. And these are different things that I may do or not do at different times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love that mindset and thinking through what that means for you as an entrepreneur, just as an individual. What does that mean when you think through going back to your company stuff and all the companies you built? Are there any key lessons you took away from how to be a good leader, like delegation or not delegation? What sort of culture you wanted to build, and how do you build that sort of culture? What does it look like, and what are you putting into practice right now at Alively?
Yeah, I think very few people go through what their values are.
Have you done that?
Yeah. I started reading Tony Robbins' The Giant Within, 10 years or more ago. And he has this values exercise. How do you go identify? How do you rank them? And then tracking. And the first time I did it, I had a certain ranking, and then I tracked myself for a few months, and it wasn't my ranking. It wasn't how I lived my life. Like, oh, wow, okay, this is a wake-up call. Here's what my values actually are. And so I think, especially in remote companies and elsewhere, align values, right? No matter how big we got, any of the companies, I would not interview unless they were reporting to me on the skills, but I would always interview on the values and saying, if this person shares our values, then even where we have disagreements, we can understand where we're coming from, why we got to where we are. And the interviews on the values were, hey, do you value this? Or what is your value around this? It was coming up with specific examples of, tell me about a time where you were in this kind of situation. How did you deal with that? What were you thinking? Right? Because there's not a single right answer. There's your answer. And did you come at it from a values base that we share? Or do you come at it in a different way from a different set of values? And so I think that and when I've made hires at times where I've told the board explicitly, this person does not align with our company values, but they're such a superstar, I'm going to do it. And I was wrong every single time it was wrong. But this gets back to why having the objective metrics to hold yourself to account to.
Yeah.
Right. Where we started this on, hey, when do you know to quit? Because when you let yourself be soft on it, I come up with all sorts of rationalizations to justify, well, this is why this time is different and I need to go around. Like, instead of having these bright line, no, this is a rule. We need people that are aligned on values. It's not going to work. And I was wrong every time I didn't do it. Like, I've never built Amazon or Meta or Tesla, right? So I don't know that my leadership is like, this is the right answer. This is the better. I know there are people that I've fired that are very good friends and mentors and have strong personal relationships.
That's a hard discussion.
It is. And it wasn't necessarily at the time, right? It may have been a year or two later that they realized, hey, okay, I understand why you did that. I understand what role I played in that. And that we come back, because I try to still always do it with kindness and love, right? Like, I really want to be someone that just loves. There was a funny thing. We would do these trainings at McKinsey at different points, like every 6 months. And a lady that started the same day as me, she was like, oh yeah, here's Andrew. Like, of course you fall in love with everybody at the training. Like, everybody, I just loved everybody. I just fall in love. And I don't know if that makes me a great leader, right? Like, I haven't built a Tesla. Those guys, I think, are killers. I think to go build that level of company, you have to be a killer. You have to just, like, it's when you ask about people running countries or leaders, people actually want sociopaths. In that they don't want you to get caught up in emotions, this and the other. They want you to do the right thing, right? Utilitarian, what's right for society, even if it costs all this on the side. I don't think I'm that person. So I'm not sure I'm a great leader, but I've learned a lot about who I am and who I am as a leader, even if it's not great. And so I build what is right for me. And this, I think, gets back to that. How do you define success, and what trade-offs are you willing to make to achieve that success?
Yeah. How do you handle like delegation, choosing what you work on when, who works on what? Are there any key strategies there?
Yeah, this may be way too basic for people, but I really like to think in coming from consulting 2x2. So what am I terrible at? What am I great at? What do I hate doing? What do I love doing? And the more of my own life I can keep in that top right bucket, the better off I'm going to be. Things that I love doing that I'm really good at. And so that's where doing it, I'm like, man, I really like writing. I like marketing stuff. So let me go hire people for the finance stuff. I don't like it. I'm not very good. Let me hire people to do that so I can put more time here. And there are things in that bottom left that other people, it's their top right. So understanding the work that needs to get done and for whom that work is in their top right, everybody's going to be happier. The more people are able to do the things they're great at, that they love doing, everybody wins. And so just constantly being clear on your own and others and the work that needs to be done and keep that matched up.
And just trying to find people to fill in those blanks where you're not good and where they're a better fit.
Yeah,
and to
exactly.
bring somebody for that. That's great. Getting closer, like to the end, a few other questions. One, just because I wanted to come back to this, who are your favorite Stoic philosophers? Like just totally random, but like I just want to know, like who are your favorite Stoic philosophers?
Yeah, I mean, by far the one I read the most, just because Meditations is this
Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, tight Bullock is Marcus Aurelius, right? Like that's probably the most read of mine. That being said, the most quotable I think is probably Seneca. I think Seneca is the best writer, but probably the least good at practicing. I think Epictetus was probably the best at practicing, but he was like not that much fun. Like he was very strict, kind of hard guy. Seneca said all the right stuff. I just don't think he did a lot of the right stuff. But he said it all very, very well. He was right. I just am not sure that he proved himself right with a lot of his own actions at times.
I mean, that's sometimes the case, right? A lot of people can be the observer from the outside and not always actually be the right one to take it all the way. That's okay. By the way, Marcus Aurelius is also great. It's funny. I read Meditations over the course of, probably a year. And I usually mostly read it when I'd wake up in the middle of the night, stress about something. And I'd read like 3, I don't know what they're called, like not chapters, or kind of, each little section, 3 or 4 of those. And I'd fall right back to sleep and feel at peace again. Is sort of how I went through it.
Yeah, that's good. If you like that, I mean, you probably read the Tao Te Ching, but very similar kind of structure. And that's one I go back to basically every year as well.
Do you find that a lot of entrepreneurs, are there certain other traits related, not philosophically necessarily, but like, is it reading? Is it when times curiosity is the big one? Is it in where are they satiating their curiosity? Are there certain things there that you think someone could put into practice if they want to become a excellent entrepreneur?
I mean, I think curiosity is a gift, whether you're an entrepreneur or anything. It is the thing that's going to drive. And so whether that curiosity satisfies itself by reading a ton. I mean, I can't remember if it was the founder of Box or Dropbox or one of those that would on Saturdays just like take stacks of marketing books up to the roof and sit on the roof and just like reading through marketing, because that was the number one thing for the business, because he was super, super curious on how do I get better at this? And it could be satisfied with playing with AI tools or building MCPs or whatever it is. But that curiosity of, it doesn't really matter what I know so far. It's the things I'm going to learn and how I put them into play. And it doesn't always have to be this super specific business book. I think there's a lot of creativity that comes from the curiosity outside your own realm, where you start bringing in ideas from potentially physics or biology. And like, well, this principle might actually make a lot of sense. I mean, that first business, Vacation Futures, the whole idea came from a comment from one of my negotiation class professors in law school. It was like, hey, here's how I buy cars. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that principle would apply in this way. And it was just porting something from a totally different domain and context into a new one. And that's where a lot of stuff comes from.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think being able to go across or spread your knowledge across a wide base enables you, and there's actually a bunch of studies around this, like enables the greatest creations to come from that, where you're taking one idea from somewhere else and applying it to this new thing that someone hasn't thought of before, really leads to great outcomes. And so to me, at least, I will say like that means reading really widely and on a regular basis, and trying to constantly learn new things. Although I always wish I have more time to go deep on stuff too. Like that's one of the challenges. And so on that note, how do you structure your days for sort of work-life balance or unity or whatever you want to call it, to give yourself the time to build this new company with this great co-founder, to be a great father, to be there with your friends, and hopefully show up for your team at the same time?
I guess instead of balance, I typically try to think of it as equilibrium, a dynamic equilibrium. So the ratios can and should change with time, where there are times in life my daughter is going to need me more than others. And so having more time to give her more presence then is more important. There are times that I might need to put certain things on the back burner for other things. And so how I do it, and this is a tool that is actually in the book, and there's a worksheet around it, is this concept I call zero-based calendaring. So just like zero-based budgeting for finance, where you say, hey, it doesn't matter what last quarter or last year was, based on what I want to achieve, what is the budget that I need? And so each quarter go through and say, how much time do I want to allocate to work, to family, to friends, to sleep, to fitness, right? Like, what are my big buckets, and how much time do I want to give to each of those? And if I add it all up and it comes out to more than 24 hours a day, then I have to do some budget cutting. Like, okay, well, which one's the bigger priority to me right now? Which one needs to come out? And then in my first TED Talk, people saw the calendar and they gave them anxiety, but I block it all. Right? Like, hey, this is the time for the gym. Hey, nobody can book anything.
Your calendar is full, but it's because you block things out.
Yeah, like time. Nanny leaves at 5:45 to 7:45 when Tallulah's asleep. Nobody can get in touch with me. I'm dead to the world. She has me full time, right? And so it looks completely full, and it is with my priorities. It's what I decided it is the right equilibrium then, not, okay, someone else booked all these times and did different things, and then I'm trying to fit in the things that I say I care about around that.
Yeah, so essentially saying, I'm going to control my calendar myself and not let someone sort of rent my, going back to your original point a while ago, rent your time.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself, just like your younger self, if you went back in time to, this guy coming out of college or going up to McKinsey, what advice would you give that version of yourself?
Yeah, it was funny for our 15th college reunion. They asked this question. I saw the same answer, and it's enjoy it. Enjoy right now, right? Like, don't always plan for the future. And, once this happens, just all that you ever live is right now in the present. Enjoy the present. Think about the future and make sure you're doing the right things, but live in the present and enjoy it.
The question we end on always is, if there's a single piece of advice, so not the advice about what you give your younger self, but a single piece of advice you'd give for any entrepreneur to achieve excellence, what would you boil that down to?
It's my billboard question. It's the thing that I actually had posted above my desk for years. Other people aren't the problem. So no matter what's going on, other people aren't the problem.
I love that. Yeah. Andrew, how can people find you, get in touch, learn more, et cetera, if they want to go deeper on the Andrew McConnell thought train?
Yeah, most active probably on LinkedIn. I have Instagram, Andrew McConnell. It's also mandrewmcconnell.com for the website if you want the workbook, anything like that. But those are probably the best. And then alively.com, the current company, to come check us out.
Amazing. Everyone should go get it. Get your team some great benefits and help them figure that out and get healthier every single day. And we didn't even spend time talking about longevity, which is a whole thing we should have spent time on too, because it's a fun thing when you start hitting your 40s to think through a bit more. But Andrew, super duper appreciate your time. Given a lot of the philosophical discussions we've had here, I think you understand just how precious anyone's time is. You can't get it back. So thank you for spending it with me and my audience. I appreciate it. If you love this episode, subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Also, tell us the number one takeaway you got from this episode in the comments so that more entrepreneurs can learn, grow, and thrive. We appreciate you.